My name is Barbara Freeman, and the title of my work is Drift in the Bann. It's a film that follows the River Bann from the beginning in the Moor Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean. On the way, I stop and look at certain events, historical or geological. I feel that the experience within this film, for me, is not like a narrative or anything. It is like a meditation. And it dwells on certain aspects of the river. The sound always begins with the original recordings, the field recordings. And then after that, I've interwoven instrumental pieces more or less throughout the film, trying to capture that kind of essence of that particular little bit of the river. I did a lot of recording. I recorded gamelan rehearsals for open arts, and I have lots of musician friends who played bits and pieces for me. And then I kind of layered them and made almost a kind of collage of sound, which suited the kind of layering techniques of the visuals. I suppose I found it quite hard at first to take into account the notion of time. So I visited all sites many, many times and filmed them for a long, long time. But always found that when you got back to the studio and put it onto the computer, you would only use 2 minutes out of an hour's filming. And I had to get used to that idea of creating a lot of material in order to get the best bits. Well, I'd made a lot of earlier prints using digital technology, used lots of different layering techniques, and they were mostly based on musical construction. But this time I wanted to take on board the idea of process and time being expressed in a kind of linear way, which I've never done before. So it was really a kind of experiment, wanting to broaden my practice, really. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I've done quite a lot of installations that have been about place. And of course, not being an incomer to Northern Ireland, I felt I ought to discover a great deal about it in a way that I don't have those childhood memories of it. In Portadown, I look at the 1641 rebellion when some Gaelic soldiers threw many Protestants off the bridge there, and that is a story that's become almost like a myth, and exaggerated over the years, of course. And then at Toome, I look at the eel fishing. It's been one of the biggest industries in Northern Ireland for a long time, and there I had to film at night because the eels hate the light and all the fishing is done at night. Another one is Mount Sandal near Coleraine, which is one of the earliest prehistoric monuments in Northern Ireland. Well, I studied sculpture in London, and after quite a long time of making sculpture, I decided to work on a flat surface, so I started to paint. Some of the early paintings were on a constructed surface. And when I started to paint, I became more interested in the idea of representation or figuration, which I'd never done as a sculptor. All my sculptures were entirely abstract. And so in a way, the painting led me to look at more immediate experience. And at that time, around about that time also, my mother died, and I felt that it was an experience that I ought to somehow give some expression to. And I felt that I couldn't do it with any representation of her. So most of the paintings are based on tiny details of her counterpane on her bed, or her hand, or something like that. And I think you might find that in the film, I also end up concentrating on very small details, rather like in the section on Oxford, Ireland. I've photographed huge fields of flowers, but when I got back into the studio, I concentrated on a single flower. And it's that idea of trying to find something that is more general, more universal. So it's the details for me that make them universal. I've done quite a few visual sound installations, and I've always worked with composers or musicians. And this time I wanted to try and do it myself. But I had previously made quite a serious study of some of the structures of 20th century music. And the form this film takes is like an arch structure, in that it starts very loud and very much an overall view of, say, the Mourne Mountains. And then as it gets to the arch, to the tip of the arch, it becomes entirely detailed, single images, and very, very soft sound. And then again at the end, when the river meets the Atlantic Ocean, it becomes very loud again and has more of a vista. And this arch-like structure seems to be quite common in a lot of 20th century music. Well, if I looked at lower River Bann, which goes from Lough Neagh to the Atlantic, to Coleraine, it starts off still quite slowly, and it goes and it meanders very gently through the landscape. But then there is a series of locks, which are in the bits of the locks are in the film, and the water starts running very rapidly after that, and it ends, of course, at the sea. So the last little section is of the sea, but I became very conscious when I was filming the sea that it is the first time that you see like the curvature of the earth, because every other time I've photographed the river, it's been running on just a horizontal plane. And so to kind of express that change in rhythm, I shot the sea at an angle so that it's like a diagonal sea. And I was trying to express there the fact that once it reaches the sea, it's got the motion of tides, but also you feel much more strongly the surface of the earth is curved. In the film, I've tried to capture my practice over the last, say, 10 years of both making digital prints and also installations, and trying to kind of unite that in some way in one work.